Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 10 of Confessions of a Market Maker. I'm your co-host, Ray, aka All Day Ray, aka Antonio Brown's life coach. And I'm joined here by my jovial co-host, who goes by VWAP Trader 1 on Twitter, a man who spent 20 years pickpocketing retail traders and spending that money on Rolexes he never wore, the director of Dirty Tricks, aka Larry the Liquidator. I'm referring to JJ. JJ, how's it going?
Hey Ray, how you doing? Jeez. These introductions, man, I tell you.
Man, I'm just glad. Like my goal is to always get a chuckle out of you or the guest, and I know I did my job. So
that's pretty good.
Thank you. Yeah, man, our guest today is nothing short of a Renaissance man, hedge fund manager, film producer, high stakes poker player, author, founder of the Thirst Lounge, a man with more philosophies than Socrates, Mr. Die with Zero, aka Gas Trader. I'm talking about Bill Perkins. Bill, how's it going, man?
Going great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh man, absolutely, man. No,
I gotta borrow some of your intros. I'm gonna start doing that with the
Oh man, that makes me feel good, Bill. Thanks for the compliment. And you know, I just wanted to bring up, man, before we really get into it, man, that baby blue suit that you wore with the beret at the Triton final table.
Yeah,
that was fresh, man. I was really
Thank you. That was like I was running around just before that day. You know, I was like, well, I might make the final table. I don't really wear suits, so I'll just buy one in London. They have suits, and I was running around early in the morning and saw that in the window. I was like, that's the suit. You know.
Yeah. No, that was because that's what I was wondering. I was like, did he know? Like, did you like come prepared for that, or was that a last minute thing? So no, that
was a last minute scramble. I even put it on my Instagram story. I was running around, and I ran to Harrods, their department store, and other suit places, and it was right in a suit store right next to where the venue was, right where the poker event. I picked it up there.
Wow, perfect.
We got a tailor on it fresh to make the length, real quick to get the length and everything right, so it didn't look too goofy. And I think it worked.
It did. No, it did. It did for sure. And yeah, man, how was it? Just while we're on the topic of Triton, I saw a lot of the big name players were like really praising it. I'm assuming you had a great time there.
I had a blast. I think it was a really great format because the format, enticed the business and the recreational player, which I am, to come out and play, which is really hard to do because we know there's sharks out there and we like battling with them, but it's better when there's more fish. You know what I mean? Like, right? Like,
exactly.
And so our egos get in the way, and we're like, well, I can beat the other fish at least, so maybe I have a shot. And so we all showed up, and I was one of the fish that made the final table.
Yeah. No, that was it was a fun sweat. It was just a fun time watching all the streams on there. And I just want to thank you again for coming on. Like when we first made this podcast, you were like one of the first, like the ideal guest I had in my head, because you cross over from both me and JJ's worlds. So we're glad you're here. And with that said, I know there's probably a good percent of our audience, Bill, who doesn't know who you are. So do you mind just sharing a few things about yourself?
Yeah, I guess so. I live in the U.S. Virgin Islands. I started as a assistant peon on the Mercantile Exchange way back in the day when there was a Merc, right? When there was open outcry trading. Mm-hmm. I kind of, moved up the ranks and went to an options trading firm called ZAR Securities. Actually, ZAR Commodities back in the day, not securities. And, I learned options. And then from there, I went to an over-the-counter broker. And then I moved to Houston in the 90s. I think it was 95, back when natural gas became deregulated, and they were looking for people who understood trading and financial options, et cetera, to come on down. So there was this big suck of talent from New York to Texas to come down. And from there, I worked at a company called El Paso Energy and a Norwegian firm. But then John Arnold, when Enron blew up, I was actually not working. I was trading on my own, and John's like, I'm going to start this hedge fund. And I was like, well, I'm trying to develop this LNG project in Central America, right? So I was in El Salvador, going back and forth to El Salvador. But I was like, if you pay me X%, I'll come work there, you know? And he's like, done. I'm like, okay, done. And so I was allowed to like, basically, I was never technically an employee. I was like a consultant, but I traded there. I had a book. It was like this weird relationship. But, you know, and Centaurus was the most successful hedge fund, full stop, I think, in commodities trading, in the history of commodities trading. And, you know, I did very well there. It was a great time to be a natural gas fundamental trader. And since then, John, you know, called in rich one day. He retired, decided he wanted to do philanthropy and you know, try and change the world in his way and make it better. And two funds came out of that. My fund called Skylar Capital Resources and another fund called Copperwood.
Cool, good
And
deal.
that's what I do. You know, and in between there and that timeline, you know, I've made 10 movies or produced 10 movies. I have a full production. I play poker. I do some wacky stuff and some fun stuff, trying to have a full life. But you can ask the questions and I'll tell you what they are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You know, I'm going to leave the hedge fund questions for JJ here in a bit. But I do want to get your thoughts on, you know, retail trading, you know, as in like individual traders, people trading from home. Have you had experience talking to like retail traders?
Yeah, I have. You know, I had a brief stint where Czar Commodities decided back in when SO's small order execution going on, and we did a foray into like, you know, retail individual traders trading at a broker dealer shop, right? And a lot of it was like having a live line to the S&P futures pit, which was open outcry at the time, and trading a particular stock and using the momentum in the futures pit along with what was going on in that stock to trade quickly in and out. Nowadays, that's all done by robots and machines faster than you can do it, right? Exactly. So, you know, that kind of died out from the way we were approaching it, and it's a different style of trading too. You know, once you're not really kind of like getting in front of the arbitrage of the machines with the S&P futures moves, it's a lot of technical trading, and you know, that wasn't really my area of expertise or what I get into. I'm a fundamental trader, so my positions are generally, you know, weeks, months, or a season. So it was kind of outside my area of expertise, and I was just like, let me stick with what I know, you know, options and trading futures, you know.
It's interesting because that SOs, I had so many buddies of mine who were market makers, and they hated SOs because, you know, they'd keep getting SOs and they wouldn't even notice that they were getting short something. And next thing you know, their inventory was short and they'd have to, you know, and then the SOs guys would run it up and sell it back into them. So stuff like that, interesting.
Yeah, it was an interesting game for a while. We were a little late to the game, and you know, and then we got out of it, and luckily I did. I went on to, you know, do very well trading natural gas options and commodities.
Definitely.
So Bill, do you get people that like come up to you and they're like, hey, like I want to trade for a living? Like, do you get that? And do you give them like what type of advice would you give to somebody?
Yeah, I get it a lot. Usually it's specific to, you know, I usually like what specifically about trading, you know, you want to trade equities or commodities. And usually it's people like, I want to do energy trading or I want to trade this. And it's like, do you have a spot? And generally we don't. And so my guidance is usually what organizations could they get into that would give them a toehold where they can learn and run a book and get experience and actually trade, right? And a lot of it's just pester the fuck out of these guys, right? Like here's the guys and pester the guy and find the guy and guy. You know what I mean? Like a lot of, you'd be surprised how that works in some of these organizations. We're like, oh, fine, we just give the guy a shot. You know what I mean? He seems bright enough, you know?
That's how I got my first job.
Yeah. That actually happened with me. Like I got an intro to be assistant peon, but everybody wanted to be assistant peon to get their chance. And I thought I had a job, but I didn't. I would like come stand out in front of the exchange like 3 days in a row. Like when are they going to take me up and do the interview or whatever? And on the third day, Bob Rossi finally took me up and tore up my resume, threw it on the floor. And it was like, you know, you don't need that shit here. And when he did that, I was like, I love this fucking place. Like there was all these people yelling and screaming and like they looked like bums to me. I was like, exactly. And I was like, wait, if these bozos could be millionaires, I could be a millionaire too. You know what I mean? Like that was like kind of delusions of grandiosity back then, which luckily came true.
Yeah, good stuff. So Bill, I'm looking to transition into a different career. And so, like when I first was thinking about this, I started Google searching, like good careers for poker players. And, I found day trading, that's what was primarily coming up. People always say there's synergy between the two. And so what skills, for myself that I learned from poker are going to serve me, learning to be a profitable trader? And then on the flip side, are there any potential downsides in me having a poker background?
I think your understanding of risk reward and bankroll management will help you a lot, right? Like you've been exposed to these concepts of risk reward, variance, et cetera, so that you know things like the Kelly criterion. Like you don't want to risk certain amount of money on small margin bets, right? Like basically your bet size is commensurate with your confidence on how the bet, risk loss limits, and also really what I tell people is like at the end of the day, it's a psychology test, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and what I mean by that is that, and I think you may have heard me say this before, is that they've done studies where the average human being needs like 5 to 7 positive events for one negative event, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they're miserable, right? They're out of balance. And as a trader, that cannot be true, right? Because if you're a 60% right trader, you're a god. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that means 40, the guy who's a god has 40% of his days being bad days. Well, if he needs, a ratio of 1 to 5 or 1 to 7, he's just going to fall apart like like a cheap suit, right? He's just going to unravel and he won't be able to handle the psychology of having that many bad days, right? And he won't think rationally, and he'll get emotional and attached to trades and not get out when he's supposed to get out, and all these other, the death spiral that happens. And you probably have seen that in poker happen to certain people when a bad beat happens or a variance happens, whatever, and they just go on a spiral, right? And and so at the end of the day, I think it's more about your constitution, your mental constitution, your psychological constitution, more than your mental acuity.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because there's tons of smart professors who can't trade. They're way smarter than me, but they can't trade. They couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Right, for sure. Because it was interesting because I think it was last podcast or maybe the one before. Like me and JJ were, talking about this topic, and that's what I was saying. I was like, hey, my ability to handle risk coming from that background, I think is going to serve me well in learning how to trade. And then I was talking about like my almost like my threshold for pain, and then he brought up that maybe that might not be a good thing. So do you see any like downsides to coming from a poker background potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on how you've been trained in poker, right? If you've been trained well in terms of bankroll management, risk reward, when to cut out, when can you analyze yourself and say, you know what, I am not thinking properly right now, right? Or even if I'm thinking properly, it's just time to stop for bankroll management reasons, right? Risk reasons. And actually early in my trading career, that was like kind of my biggest downfall was like, I was like all in, you know what I mean? Like what risk be damned. Right. And so as I've grown and matured as a trader and I have other investors, mainly they're like, this is kind of the risk profile they want. I need to adhere to this. I can't necessarily hammer the way I used to and do those things. So, that poker mentality, like, fuck it, I'm all in, I don't care. You need to like kind of table that. And so that you get the maximum yield of dollars that you can get out of the market.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just come in discipline and taking. Yeah. No, that's what I told JJ. I've always felt I've always been more conservative and maybe to a fault with my bankroll management, et cetera. And so Bill, moving on, like there's a question I always ask myself, and it probably doesn't serve me, to be honest, but I find it interesting. What do you think has more variance for the individual, poker or trading?
Ooh, how it's skill based, right? Like I think that there are trading strategies out there. There's so many things to trade, right? You can trade currencies, you can trade equities. Within the equity universe, you can trade one single stock out of 5,000 or more stocks, right? And so I think you can find a lower variance trading strategy than poker, right?
Right.
That being said, the variance that I adjust for, commodities trading. There's commodities you can go and you trade power. You day trader in power. You're not going to get any greater variance than that here in the U.S. Right? I mean, ERCOT Power is now trading $9,000 for this hour. Right? Normally trades 40. Right? And it'll go back down or whatever. So like you get
holy shit.
You can get some serious variance going on there, and the weather is the big driver, right? That's our random number generator.
Okay.
Yeah, right. And so it really depends on what you're trading and what niche you're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's guys who make like a pretty good living, just arbitraging this versus that, right? Pair trading this versus that, and doing merger arbitrage and things that are like fairly low risk and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Bill.
Things that I'm not an expert in, but I know that they're, guys like, this is what I do. I've been doing it for, 20 years. And it's like, this is the money I get, et cetera. Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So Bill, are poker players better traders than traders are poker players?
I tend to think so. Because it seems that when traders come into poker, they overestimate how the level of learning they need to do of poker, right? They think that they tend to think, well, I'm a trader, I understand the math, the risk rewards, but there's a deeper level of understanding of poker. Like when you really start to study poker and understand what's going on and concepts like indifference and GTO and exploitive, that traders don't go and do their homework. But if a poker player comes into to trading, they're like, I don't know shit. I know this, but I need to learn. And they actually do learn. So I think it's more of an attitude and a learning thing than an outright raw human capability thing. Right.
Right. So
people think poker is much simpler than it actually is.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. And so I guess on that topic, how much study time do you actually put into poker, and like, are you using software?
So up until maybe 9 months ago, very little, right? Like not like just kind of learn by doing, like playing chess. That's kind of, it's recreational, right? And it's like, oh, have fun. I'll play these guys, kind of old school poker. I don't think you got it, son. I know who you are. That type of thing.
Yeah, Bill. I used to love going on 2+2, the high stakes forum, to see your hands on PokerStars.
Yeah, it's just really gambling, right?
Yeah.
Back then, and then I decided, I'm like, you know what? The stakes I'm playing and the amount I'm playing, I should be studying, right? I should be learning, and so. I got 2 coaches and started learning.
Yeah, nice.
And putting some effort into it. It's like, it's recreational, but this is real money. So let's take this seriously.
Right. Show some respect.
Right. Like I can have fun and not lose. Right. Yeah. Right. That's the ideal. Right. Like have fun, not lose from me. Right. And actually make money. Right.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Last question from me. Then I'm going to kick it off to JJ. Your thoughts on online poker versus live poker, and what do you prefer?
Well, with the clock, I prefer live poker. And cash games, I prefer live cash games. It's just, for me, I'm kind of like a mini robot trading, and I do that all the time, right? And I think people who are in poker or in trading love solving puzzles, right? Yeah. They actually they love money, but they love making money by solving puzzles, right? Like we're kind of addicted to puzzles, right? And so, but being in the puzzle box, land is draining after a certain while. And so when you're online, you're sort of missing that human interaction and the other entertaining aspects of it, right? And the live tells and that type of thing. And so that makes it bearable. But I'm in front of a screen a lot of hours in my life, whether it's a computer screen or my phone screen, using, an app to trade on, and to, then go, oh, wait, now I'm going to entertain myself, or I'm going to play poker, and then I'm going to do the same thing again. It's just overwhelming. Right.
Yeah, I could get that. Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. So JJ, you want to kick it off?
Oh yeah, definitely. First of all, honor speaking to you. You've traded in some of the most the sort of the history of the financial markets with John Arnold, and so you started out on the floor of the was it the New
Yeah, New
York
York
Mark?
Mercantile Exchange.
Now was that located in the Trade Center buildings?
Yeah, it was for World Trade Center.
Okay,
I was
interesting, interesting.
I was there the first time the bomb went off. when they
Were you
yeah.
really?
I mean, I was going to San Diego to visit my friend Quinn, who was playing football for San Diego at the time, and my phone blew up once I landed, and it was just like, oh, I was like, wow, I missed this the first bomb. You know, when they bombed the garage, right?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. And just how did what was it like back then? Because I've spoken to a lot of guys from the Chicago floor, but you're the first person I've interviewed or spoken to who was on the New York Merc floor. Can you tell us a little bit of what it was like, the culture, that sort of thing?
It was chaos and crazy. It was kind of like everything traded on the Merc. The Mercantile is energy. So there was coffee, sugar, cocoa, the energy exchanges, right, and gold, right, that were there, and cotton. Cotton, coffee, sugar, cocoa, gold, and energy. And I was in the energy side in the Merc building. And it was just a lot of people from Staten Island, heavy Italian influence, boys club, crazy market makers trading. The pits would stop during NCAA basketball team, and compliance would have to come stop us from trading basketball futures, right? And the clerks ran the pools who had no money, but that's what our job was, is to make all these markets on basketball futures, right? And then somebody would be on the line with somebody from Chicago, and they would have like 100 pool, and we'd have a pool out of 64, and they do conversions and arbitrage and whatever. And, it was just nuts. And it was like, you need tickets? Oh, there's that guy. Go to Larry Tickets. He's got tickets. You need this guy or whatever. You need a car. It was like commodity exchange for every single commodity you can possibly imagine, from sex to sofas, It was kind of this Wild West, financial arena that was both scary and wonderful at the same time.
Yeah, that must have been a great experience. I mean, I was never down on the floors. I started right when they closed the floors in Vancouver on the trade desks. But I can imagine, a floor of that size with that many diverse people, and the stories that you must have. That would be a book in itself.
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. There's been a couple books. It's just it's really hard to relay to people the sense and the feeling. And I remember, like, I was making $16,000 a year or whatever when I first got on there, and having that Merc badge, and I was so proud to have a clerk badge. I was one of those guys you saw down in riding with the badge prominently displayed, hung around his neck. It's just like, I'm a yuppie. I was so freaking happy as an assistant peon, just work, just because of the opportunity set there and the things I was learning rapidly.
Yeah, that's quite something, dude. Now, I just I use the word OPM a lot, other people's money, and because I work with a lot of retail traders now, and for yourself, how does your psychology, have to change when you're dealing with managing other people's money as opposed to trading your own account?
Yeah, it's sometimes it's a greater level of discipline, and so when I opened up my fund, I was the first version of it was like, don't cry if you lose all your money. Like, this is all your money's always at risk every day, right? And we're a riskier, high volatile fund, and the investor base wanted X, Y, and Z. And so we adjusted that. And I find myself that when I have other people's money, my game is a higher level, right? Because, it's like if I'm trading in my personal account and, some other priority comes up or whatever, I can make a decision to go, oh, well, I'll just deal with this, or I'll now I won't pay attention to this, or whatever. It's only $1,000 or 10, whatever the number is.
Yeah.
I can't do that with your money.
Yeah.
I made an agreement with you. I said I would do my best. You know what I mean? I got to be on this. I got to do this kind of risk reward trades. I got to do X, Y, and Z. And I got to explain to you after the fact when shit goes wrong that I take the appropriate risk reward decision. And I would, do it again. Not that, hey, I got tired or was goofing off or whatever.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like I can't get tired. I don't have that luxury anymore. And it's constraining in a way, but it's constraining in a good way, I guess.
Now, I also read that you do the risk management as well. I mean, you're the risk manager, or have been at various firms. How did you find that experience, and did it help your trading?
I think that label means different, and it means that you have a risk book and you can risk capital, right? Like, it's not like I'm the guy going, hey, cut back your limits. You know what I mean? I do that with the traders under me here in this organization, but generally, there's a risk committee. And I have, I'm one of the guys on it, but I have a CFO and CIO. They come tap me on the shoulder. Hey, there's a limit. There's a funny story that when I was trading at Centaurus, I used to bust limits. John fined me all the time.
Yeah. Really?
It's like, if you look at my total P&L, I would go, well, that doesn't include the fines I paid to John. Because I was aggressive as hell back then.
Wow, that's amazing.
He'd be like, like at the end of the day, like I was like, oh, I don't want to cross the bid ask or whatever. Better to just pay the fine. Fucking I paid him the fine. And it's in the millions. I paid John millions of times.
Oh, I can imagine.
John was like, I was the one guy in the shop you had to worry about. Like, John had to worry.
Okay, you were the guy. Okay.
I was that guy, right? Okay. Like I was like, okay. I would do my work, whatever, get convicted. I'd be like, we gotta do this, whatever. I'd buy risk, you know what I mean? I'd do whatever I could to try and get it on when I saw a scenario that looked good.
Now trading in that sort of a sense, the way you guys trade, like, natural gas is, you'll come in at it from a fundamental, because, mostly I work with day and swing traders. So, you guys will like build into a position because you have a thesis, and then you have to have, you got to have the stones to hold that position, even when it runs against you, even, if your thesis is right. What can you kind of describe what that experience is? Because most of our listeners have no clue.
It's we come from a belief, like there are different styles of day trading. There was some day trading that went on based on what we thought the psychology of the market, or what information we felt was going to come out and how the market was going to react to it, whether it be the weather or the EIA or et cetera. But generally, we were seasonal positional traders, right? We had a thesis that, hey, there's too much gas and there won't be room to store it, so prices need to go lower, right? So they shut in the gas. Or, hey, there's not enough gas. We're burning too much gas. It's a normal winter. We're going to have to ration off demand, and price is the mechanism which happens that, right? And in that belief is this kind of like the market is quasi-efficient and that economics work, right? That price matters. So that's one thing, right? We come at it from that belief. And we gather fundamentals and we have a view. And when the market is significantly different from a view, we start loading up, and we generally don't change until the fundamental changes, or they absolutely kick us in the teeth, right? And stop us out, right? And sometimes those kickings in the teeth really, really hurt, right? And so,
as Brian Hunter can attest to.
Yeah. I mean, he had a thesis, right? And the size he put on the thesis was large. His exit and entry fee was too big, right? He could only have one way. He had to be right, or else he was going to blow up, and he blew up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm from the province, right next to Alberta, and I remember when Amaranth was blowing up, and I guess John Arnold was on the other side of those trades, from what everybody says and what I guess the history books. What was it like working for him, or with him, I should say?
The majority of the Amaranth, like Brian Hunter's position, was in my book against him. We all traded it. He traded a spread called March, April, right? Like that was the biggest thing that it became. He had like a butterfly, like long October, short October, long March, short April, right? And the Oc rolls off, and he has this massive March, April spread on, right? So much so that storage fields were being built. Like it changed the nature of the market. Like people were building storage fields based on those spreads, right? And he had them out for several years, right? Like it was at a price where people were like, wow, I can build something and arb this market. So we thought it was ridiculous. And we kind of got out of the way because people would just get run over, right? Like, buy them at 90. Okay, where are you now? At 95. Buy them. Where are you now? So now where's it now? Buy with $1.20s. Like it just ran people up, just blowing them out, right? Past their risk limits. And I remember the day it was unraveling, I got a call like 5 a.m. John calls. He's like, where would you make a market for 60,000 March Aprils? Which is like an ungodly amount of size, right? And I'm like, I think I'm here at. I gave up a two-way, hung up, didn't hear anything, right? So we didn't get the deal, right? Like when they were unwinding, but I had the opposite side of I had a lot of the opposite side of the position. So
the
next thing you know, 2 hours later, I get a call from a broker on the front end because he had strips of March Aprils. Broker's like, where are you on 30,000 March Aprils? I'm like, oh God, here we go. You know what I mean? And, I'm in a market and et cetera. But while that was happening, like before they blew up, I was making ridiculous markets for Brian Harder in and out every day. Like it was just amazing what,
wow.
He had such a big foot, there's a concept called the reflexive principle. It's basically your footprint on the market, right? Like if you buy enough or sell enough, right, it's going to, impact the price. And it was just a massive footprint. It was just really hard to make money, in the size he was slinging around back then. And if he was right, he would have crushed us all. Like, he would have absolutely destroyed the market. This interview might not be happening had he been right.
Kidding. No, the thing is, this is, people don't realize that the history. I'm a junkie about the history of the financial markets, and I was very, very blessed to one day talk to Nelson Bunker Hunt, who was a friend of a client of mine, and they cornered the silver market back in the 70s. So like events like this and what you traded through and actually were on the opposite side of the book, that's pretty amazing. You usually don't get access to guys like you.
It's an amazing time. Like it was a defining moment. And luckily that, the way it worked at Centaurus is that we didn't have an end of year, right? The people who invested at end of year, but as a trader, and you had a rolling year. So as you made money, you were able to deploy more risk. So you can risk almost what's called your positive trader balance. You could risk your entire roll, right? You just can't go negative.
Jeez.
And so, I was lucky enough to, or, smart enough, or whatever you want to call it, right, to have a pretty sizable trader balance going into that. And I was willing, I was Bill Perkins back then. I'm ready to swing for the fences. Like, let's bring it on. Let's risk it all, And so, luckily I had a sizable balance that I could trade and take advantage of these anomalies in the market, right? And get in these good risk reward trades.
That's amazing, especially like trading that kind of size. For retail traders, it's not like when we're in and we're marketing in and out of the S&P E-mini, which is insanely liquid, and our size is not the size that these guys trade. It's hard to get out of these positions. You can't just you just can't get out of them.
No, it was like you better be right, right. I mean, fortunately, it's funny is the next winter we were like, if we had a winter like this earlier, Hunter might have destroyed the whole market because everybody had some of the opposite position. He basically was Hunter versus the market. We were one of the largest pieces of it.
That's just mind blowing. And I don't know if you saw, there was an interview at the time, and you probably saw it when Julian Robertson from Tiger, the guy who started Tiger Management, he was being interviewed on Bloomberg about this, and he's an older gentleman, and And the only thing he could really talk about that really amazed him was that Brian Hunter was driving a Bentley around Calgary, Alberta.
He was, like Brian Hunter was like a guy, like he got another chance, like somebody gave him some money, and I was like, I actually would give that kid money. And here's my logic behind that. I went to the Kentucky Derby with him. We all went down to the Kentucky Derby with him, and he killed it at the Kentucky Derby. I said, he's either going to lose 100% of your money, or 10x it. And I was like, and it's not unreasonable for him to 10x it. Like he has, he can do it. And I thought that he's an asymmetric. He's the right level of aggression. Problem is he didn't really take into account liquidity of his positions.
Yeah.
But I think some of his insights into which we saw in subsequent years, that, you can have a problem and run out of gas in March. The infrastructure isn't there. I think they were overblown. He was overpaying and for the risk reward. He had the wrong risk reward on, right? He just didn't pay attention to that, but he had some good ideas, buried in all the chaos. There were some good ideas in there.
Yeah, I still to this day remember Julian Robertson going, "Why would you have a Bentley in Calgary? We ride around on horses up here, and there's no, we have dirt roads or something like that, And I was laughing for about half an hour.
He was an aggressive, shiny guy,
Oh man, the other thing too is just from a psychology standpoint, when you're building into these positions on a fundamental view, and for the people who are listening out there, you guys are listening to somebody who was in on history that was made, and there takes a certain type of individual to run money when the market's crushing them and they have a fundamental view, and these are how big trades are done. What is your psychology like when you're going through that, especially when you're getting drawn down?
I think one of my strengths is that I was the least affected by bad events, right? And the least muted, least celebratory on good events, right? It was just kind of this is part of the game. But there were two particular times I remember where Centaurus risked the firm, where we were like,
wow.
Oh my God, we're going to die. Turns out we made 20% that month or whatever in the end, but we were going to die. The market was going against us. It was high stress levels, et cetera. And, subsequently after coming out, we went through a polar vortex where it was super cold. I was on the wrong side of the market, and I was like, all right, I'm dead. And I tend to think of other people in those scenarios, right? Because I'm a trader, but I support a back office. I got clerks, I got analysts, et cetera. I start to worry a little about them, but I accept that I'm in a ring. I'm a boxer in a ring. I'm going to get punched, and most boxers get knocked down. And honestly, if I trade this long enough, I'm going to get knocked out, right? And so it's the nature of the beast, and you have to accept that and realize that just like bad times come along, there will be a bad time. There will be more opportunities and chances. And if you believe in your edge and you still have edge and you can still do it, you stick with it and keep going until they knock you the hell out, right? And so,
no, that's really cool, because getting a perspective. I come from a different side of the world, but I was doing deals and taking companies public, and I had stress too. But how did you keep it from affecting your personal life? Were you able to go and do normal things, or were you always looking at the screen, or could you actually go and live a normal life, away from the screen for a couple hours? Were you able to do stuff?
I would say yes, but it does interfere. It wasn't the stress, right? My wife would never know if I had a good day or bad day. It was just the same,
oh, really?
It was just kind of, and I think that was actually not good, because I robbed her of the ability to be a part of my life, right? Celebrate the good times and commiserate with the bad times and the growing and learning that comes with that. But honestly, it just didn't really affect me that much. I'm like, I was a screen clerk. I lived, I can be a screen clerk again. You know what I mean? I just felt like I don't want to go back, but I can go back, And so, and I was like very appreciative of where I was and had perspective of like where you know what I mean? Like, it's like I'm in fantasy land. First of all, I'm in the United States of America in a growing economy,
Yep.
post civil rights. Like, I got all the advantages one could be, right? And
Exactly.
so when you start thinking about like on a broader spectrum, you can come out of kind of like your myopic universe and go like, all right, so we
Yeah.
lost, $20 million
Yeah.
today. You know what I mean? Half my P&L, or I lost my fund just drew down 50%, and I'm getting redemption notices, and I'm probably going to blow up. You deal with that. Like, it's part of being a boxer. Like, you can't be a boxer if you don't like getting punched. And so
That's true.
you got to like getting punched. Like, it's part of the job. You're like, okay, that's
Yeah.
part of it. Like, next, I'll get them next time. And so that's, those moments are what I generally try and, because there's tons of bright guys, tons of bright guys. It's like, but are they still bright and still rational after they've been punched in the face?
No, that's true.
And so that's the problem. Like, you have tons of bright guys panicking and worrying, what am I going to do? I might lose my job, and all that stuff starts getting into there, and the ego starts getting into it. And once that happens, you're done for. And so as almost like a religious belief, that we try to tend to be robotic about it, right? Like the least. And one of the things that John was great about is removing his emotions from trading. Really? He was the master of that.
Really? Oh, okay. Wow. Interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, I was always fascinated by.
You want to know the market psychology. You want to read other people's emotions, because that's a fundamental, right? Demands for futures is fundamental, right? And technicals are generally good for spotting that, right? Because other people are believing, and it gives you information on what other people are thinking or believing, right? So you kind of want how to understand what the market is thinking, but you don't want your own ego, fears, etc., affecting your decision making. Right? You want to remove that as much as possible.
Got it.
And John was pretty much the king of that. I think I'm, back then and even now, probably way up there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then you also, you use it in poker as well too. So
I don't think I'm as good at it as in poker for whatever reason. Right? It's interesting. It's like, you do have to use that in poker. Like, you have to understand the reality of the game and the variance of the game, so that your expectations and your reality don't mismatch, and you go on tilt. I mean, a trader on tilt can ruin his life. A poker on tilt, it probably lose a session, right? So that's I think it's much more dangerous being a tilty trader than poker, because I think you'll quit after whatever you have on the table. When you're trading, when you sign an agreement to trade as a retail, you sign something with a clearinghouse that says they can come and take everything you own to make up for your losses, right? And so your life is on the line, right? Your economic life is on the line.
True.
Whereas when poker, it's just whatever you got on the table at the time, right? But like, you get on tilt and you start shorting something, and you don't want to give up, and it keeps going and blows up, and the clearinghouse stops you out, and it's not just what you had in the clearing account. It's like, well, what else you got in your pocket? You know what I mean?
What else you got? That's like being held upside down and they're shaking you, man.
It's like that scene from Good Will Hunting. What you got in your pocket?
Speaking of movies, how did you end up getting into producing movies? I mean, you're quite a sociable guy, and I've seen your Instagram, so you're out.
It was just one of those things where, like, when I got rich, I always kind of was interested in movies and making movies, and I was just like, well, I think this is what rich guys do. You know what I mean? And so I was in LA, and a friend had made a movie called Better Luck Tomorrow. He produced it. He made it for like $1 million, and MTV Films picked it up and they put it out, and I was like, shit, I can lose $1 million. I want to make movies. And so I got ICM was my agent, and I got into film packaging, and I was just kind of like originally the jackass with the money. Like, I didn't know what I was doing, but I had the money, and people just kind of pretend, they're nice to you because you have the money.
Yeah.
And then I liked it. I really enjoyed it. And so then I started to really get into it and like, all right, I don't want to invest in movies. I want to make movies. I want to be part of the process. And so my saying became, I don't invest in bakeries. I bake cakes. You know what I mean? So if I'm not baking a cake, I don't care that your bakery is going to make $1 zillion, whatever. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the creative process and putting something out there and having some fun, And so I kind of got sucked into the world of making movies for a bit.
Oh, it's interesting. I saw Unthinkable and I liked it. It was very dark.
Yeah. That was my first jackass with the money movie. Unthinkable. Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Hey, JJ, hey, can I interject for a second? Hey, Bill. So I was looking and I saw you're attached to a movie in pre-production. That's correct.
Yeah, it could be. Which one?
Zombies.
Yeah.
That's the name already got me, man. Like I'm going to see it. Like what can you?
Ghetto. This is kind of one of those funny nepotism stories where my brother writes, right? He comes to me, he's like, I got this story, I got this idea. He's like, it's about zombies in the ghetto. And, the zombies are going around and like the reaction of the ghetto is kind of like nobody's really paying attention, right? Like they're zombies are walking on a guy's azalea. The guy's like, what do you want of azaleas? Somebody's getting eaten off a bike, it's kind of, and so the zombies and the reaction in Hood was kind of like basically about apathy in the ghetto, but in a zombie movie, and then the community rises up to kill the zombies. So the community rises up to kill off apathy, right? And I was like, this is brilliant. We have to do this movie. It's funny and, it's got a message and it's humor and it's zombie and, he wrote a script and I'm trying to get it right. But making movies takes a lot of time. Like it's like having a baby, you gotta have your script, get your script right. You gotta attach your actors and actresses, hire a director, or if you're directing, producer, the whole crew, get out, shoot it, put it in a can, edit it, talk with distributors. It's just a massive amount of time. And I just haven't had the time cut out to do it,
Yeah.
Or I haven't moved it up the priority list, like eventually I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. One of these days I'm going to figure out what I want to do.
Yeah, well, hopefully you can get it out there. That definitely seems like a interesting concept.
Yeah, the movies are fun to make. Like even just goofball movies, they're a lot of fun.
All right, JJ, you still got a few more questions, or should I jump back in? Okay,
no, jump back in, please do.
All right, so I don't know if you've heard of Turney Duff. He was the author of best-selling book called Byside. And he talks a lot about like him and his buddies getting like chauffeured around New York City in like limos, whorehouses, coke dens, etc. You were once a driver, one of the chauffeurs, correct?
Correct. I was like, well, I don't know about being in the back. I know about driving the front of the limo. So when I was a screen clerk, I didn't have enough money to like get by. Like it was just not going to cut it, And so they were like, our limo driver quit, and I was like, I'll drive the limo. And so I didn't know anything about driving a fucking limo, but I drove it. I was like a driver at night to drive around, and I didn't even know there were whorehouses until I was a driver in there. Like I had some really funny experiences driving the limo and driving people around at night to make money, but I was making more money as a driver at night than I was as a clerk. Because, these guys be coke, drunk, taking you places, tipping you, here you go, Perkins. You know what I mean? Like, here's $100, here's $200. I'm like, this is fucking awesome, I'm going to get a date tonight. And then I go out. And, I saw kind of what the 6-figure plus crowd did to release Steam.
Any interesting, like stories or moments that stick out?
I mean, I would tell something a little bit more. I can just tell you that I know the whorehouse that Howard Stern used to go to, and a couple of guys. Like, it's just interesting stories. Like they'd be drive you here, they bring you in. It's just really weird, chaotic movie-like stuff. And it seemed like a cartoonish version of life, but it was real. It was happening. It was like, holy shit.
Exactly. And everybody stereotypes us as those kind of guys. But when you actually go and spend time with those guys, I see why they do it.
Yeah.
It's
especially the floor, like it's a different animal, right? Like we're totally different from the New York Stock Exchange where everybody's wearing suits and ties and shit like that. The floor is like Animal House,
Exactly.
It's literally like Animal House. That's like the appropriate movie to tell you what the floor is like.
Oh yeah. I mean, our Vancouver floor for the Vancouver Stock Exchange, there was a guy that sold beer out of a cooler, so it was not really, it wasn't very white shoe Goldman Sachs.
No, my job was to sneak sandwiches on the floor to traders. Like that was my job. Check trades and sneak sandwiches and do whatever, right? Yeah. No, but it's they were in high pressure, the market makers, high pressure jobs, adrenaline's going all the time. And I can see why they would, have this level of chaos at night where, when they're not trading.
Yeah. So, so Bill, so you, transitioning to the, the Thirst Lounge and, one, I got to ask why the name, because like I was confused at first. I thought I was going to like log on to Twitch and just see a bunch of broads doing, God knows what. But,
yeah, that I think I've said this before, but so I was dating this girl and I was on Instagram. She kind of hated that I was on Instagram. She was kind of like anti-Instagram. She's like, it's just a thirst trap. Like guys flex, post cars and money and jets and whatever to get girls all thirsty, and girls are showing bikini shots and blah 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 to get the guys thirsty. It's just a thirst trap. And I was like, whoa. I don't want to trap anybody. I want to lounge. I just want to thirst lounge, come visit and not trap you. You know what I mean? So I was like, I had this idea of like the thirst lounge, not a thirst trap. And so that's where I got the name
that's
from.
Clever. No, that's clever. I like it. So, you want to explain to the audience, like, what you're doing, with the.
Yeah. So like the thirst lounge, like I used to basically get on, Jeff Gross was like, hey, you should stream. You like streaming. You're a fairly entertaining guy. Why don't you get on stream on Twitch and play poker and just, chat with an audience, etc. So I did it, enjoyed it. I would just set up on my boat and travel around the BVI and play poker. And it was fun. I really enjoyed interacting with people and got, a little bit of an audience going, and realized that I don't have the time to dedicate that the audience needed, right? Because contrary to TV where you just you speak, it's recorded, and they watch it when they want to watch. You actually have interaction. That's the attraction that you can talk to your TV. All right, that's Twitch, right? And so I was like, well, why don't I run an experiment and give some young poker players some resources and some aspirations, and they run a channel and see what they can do, right? Like, you always have these people like, well, if I had this money and blah 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 in a bankroll, I'd do X, right? Or if I had this or that, and I was like, all right. Here you go. Here's fucking X.
Right.
Let's see what you do.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that's the Thirst Lounge as it is right now. It's theirs to run. You can see whether they're learning and getting better in poker, if they're taking advantage of the opportunity that they're given, both on a media basis and a poker basis, or whether they're just screwing off and fucking it up.
No, shout out to the Thirst Lounge. I saw one of the guys banked the tournament last night.
Yeah, they're getting much better. They've gotten a lot. The original was like, hey, you get a house in the Virgin Islands, you get use of the yacht, we got an editor, you get some production value, and you get 20,000 bankroll, right, to go ahead and play poker. But on top of that, they're getting tickets and courses and stuff like that to help make them better poker players, and brought in another producer to give them better chance at entertaining people and seeing how they develop. And sometimes I think certain people have come down, like it, and can excel in that format, kind of undirected format. And some people may find out, this is not for me. I thought I could kick ass and do this, but maybe it's not for me. But we'll find out. And hopefully it's entertaining.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I mean, as poker needs more entertainment, more, energy. And I think that's definitely bringing it with that. I mean, we could even do bring something like that. I think would even be interesting, like with trading as well. It could like replicate that model. And so moving on to your book, you're authoring a book on a philosophy of yours. So you can tell the listeners what that's about. And I'm interested how you even like came to this concept of Die with Zero. So
the book is called Die with Zero, and it's essentially goes on this this simple premise. It's that if you work for money, right, you generally work for money to survive and then also to do stuff, right? And so to the extent that you work for money to do stuff and then die with money, you've essentially wasted your life, right? Because you work, it's like you went in a rat in a wheel and you didn't get the cheese, right? And so a lot of people get good and develop habits to acquire capital, and they forget the reason why they acquired that capital or that money, right? They just keep doing it. And what they don't realize is that their body is deteriorating. And so the subset of activities that they can spend and have experiences on, whether it's even just walking around, deteriorates with time. So given those, I won't go into the whole book, but given those ideas, one, it's optimal to die with zero, right? No money left over, right? That's the if you were God, you would do it that way, right? And there's an time to when to spend your money, when it should be at its maximum level and when your net worth should peak, right? Because when you're saving, you're delaying gratification, right? You're saving to survive, and then you're also saving to delay gratification for future gratification that may be greater, right? You're investing. You're like, well, I'll make this and I'll be able to take 2 or 3 ski trips as opposed to 1 right now, right? But at a certain point, it's like you're not trying to ski at 90. Right?
Very true.
Very true. So if you were looking down from heaven, right, and say, okay, Bill Perkins, you're going to live to 86, and what are the things you want to do? And here's all the things you could do. And I go, I want to do this 2,000 times. I want to have sex 18,000 times, and I want to blah, 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 whatever. It's like, okay, great. Here's your bucket of things. You can do all these things. But you have to put them in the right time slots. Because if you don't, you can't fit them all in your life. Right? You're not going to put the 18,000 sex things at 90, right? Or the skiing, right? And you're not going to put the having the kids at 90, right? You're going to put it somewhere in between 20 and 35, 40, right? And like you're going to have to like pack these things right. And so when you start unpacking these things you want to do in the proper buckets, you realize that there's kind of a curve, right? And that curve is activities, and activities is represented by money. And so it represents your spend curve. And so you can interchange those two. And so it's about optimizing your life and getting the maximum out of your life by correctly ordering your activities and spending your money at the proper times.
Now, I got to interject here because this is a book that I could have used when I was 25 years old. Because everything that you talk about just now, I made those exact mistakes. I mean, I haven't had a vacation since 1995. The first time I had a vacation was 2012 when I had a quintuple bypass and I died. So, this hits me like to the core, because after I died and came back to life and, had heart surgery, then I started thinking about these things and I was like, wow, I haven't had a vacation since 95, because if you're not there to answer the phone, your clients go to somebody else. So yeah, that's amazing. I wish I had that book when I was 25.
I can't get you back your past, but we can, you can start from now, start thinking about like, okay, from now to the day I die, what are the things I want to do, and what age bucket and what year do they go in, right? Like, what do I want out of this ride, right? And so, you can, it's not too late. The earlier, the better to think about these. But these are the things, I wrestle with too, that I need to think about. Like, okay, I'm 50 now. What do I want to do? What do I want out of life? And like, I was actually going to go wakeboarding the other day. I was like, maybe not going to go wakeboarding. It was on my birthday. I was like, wait a minute. I'm not going to be able to fucking wakeboard pretty soon, right? I got a bad back. I got a degenerative thing in my back, whatever. I'm like, I'm going to fucking wakeboard now because I'm going to get the memory dividend from that and the experience now, because this is not something that I can put off 20 years or 15 years, right?
Exactly.
And so those are the questions and things, I think everybody needs to think about at any income level, right?
That's true. That's true. Yeah, we're the same age. So yeah, I had my heart attack at 44. So yeah.
It's a wake up call, right?
So Bill, from my understanding, you were at least, I don't know where you're at in the progress of the book, but you were working with like a behavioral economist, correct?
Yeah, Kay Unchut, and I are working with an author. So I just actually, before I got on this call, had a call with the writer I'm working with, and the copy editor. So like it's
Nice.
in copy edit. So it's the book is pretty much done. Like I'm not even allowed to change certain things right now from the publisher. It's just like, hey, comma goes here, grammar, punctuation, that type of thing, and the layout. So I've just gotten a look at the layout, and it comes out May 5th, 2020, but it'll be done way before then. Like in the publishing world, there's a long ramp of marketing. So, I'll make sure you guys get an advanced copy.
So Bill, so this is something that like, and I'm pretty sure I heard you talk about it. It's like you like can model this, correct? Like,
yeah. So the original idea, like I've been thinking about this. You asked me, like, wait, I've been thinking about this for a while. Like I was like, having one of those existential moments, like, what is the purpose of money? Like, why am I earning this money, and when am I gonna spend it? Right? Like I'm clearly, looking at my parents and my dad who was older, like who didn't, there's a day you die and there's a day you stop doing shit, right? There's two different dates. People don't get that. They're like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna like. Everybody thinks they're gonna be running marathons until they're 90, and then they're just gonna keel over, and that's like the 0.0001% of it. Most of us will be like, we're just gonna sit in the house and watch Jeopardy. You know what I mean? Like, and we're not gonna do anything anymore except live off of our memories, right? And so I started thinking about that. Like, it's like, okay, so if I don't need money to do shit later, when should I be spending this money? And all those thoughts started coming to my head and developing this idea and this philosophy and being like, what's the curve? What's the spend curve? What's the maximum? If each experience is worth a point, but they diminish in value. Like walking around Paris is great now, but walking around Paris when you're 80, maybe not so great, I went to St. Petersburg, and one of the great things about St. Petersburg is that they let you walk up these churches and walk around the balconies. There were busloads of tourists coming along, right? Busloads of people who were retired or like 65. I didn't see a single fucking one walk up the stairs at the top of the church. So their experience at St. Petersburg was less than mine. They didn't get the same St. Petersburg, right? Not that they didn't have a good time. It just wasn't as great as it could have been. There were views and things they didn't experience that they couldn't experience, right? And so, that hits me. You know what I mean? That hits me hard. And I'm like, okay, I need to start doing shit and consuming and having these experiences now. And so I was going to make a model, like an app, where you could put in your net worth and interest rates and your health and your what you think your health decline is going to be, your estimated day of death, how conservative you want to be. And it says, okay, here's your spend curve. You know what I mean? To get you to die with zero. So you have a more optimal life. And so like it would kick out and say, hey, Bill Perkins, you're supposed to be spending X per month and you're not. Here's some suggestions. Go fucking do this and click the random number generator and do that. Or go visit your aunt or go walk a park. You know what I mean? And I went to go see my doctor, and he he's one of these doctors where they try and keep you alive forever, right? They give you shots and hormones and MRIs and all this other kind of crap. And part of the evaluation is a psych evaluation, right? So they ask you 1,000 dumb questions. They're not dumb, but whatever, right? And one of the questions are, they ask you with stress, and he says, "Are you worried about running out of money?" And I go, "I hope I run out of money." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And so I go into the spiel, and he's like, "Nobody's ever answered the question that way, right?" And he goes, "You have to write a book." He's like, "I understand that, but you have to write this." And so that was the motivation I got to finally get off my ass and find somebody to help me write this book, go through the project, spend hours and hours on the phone talking and blathering and writing and blah, 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 and get this book going.
Wow.
And that's how it happened. Dr. Chris Renner, he was the one who's like, nobody
shout out to Dr. Renner. That's great. No, I love hearing stories like that. You know what I mean? It's just like it was meant to happen, Bill. You know what I mean? Like that's incredible. That's awesome. You seem to me like a well-read person. Do you have any like top 3 like book recommendations, maybe tailored towards our audience, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, wow. Well, I'm going to go one that's like not necessarily tailored to the audience, but I think helps people in life. My favorite book to recommend people is The Four Agreements, like right off the bat, right? That's just like get you right, and then we'll move on. The second book is I really love this book. It's called A Brief History of Financial Euphoria. At least I think that, by Kenneth Galbraith, right? And so I've read that book. My mother gave that to me a long time ago. And I've read that book like maybe 4 or 5 times. It's very short, and it's about every bubble and mania in history. Tulip bubble, South Sea bubble, etc. And my first read was like, wow, you got to short bubbles, right? Like all these bubbles that have happened in history and why they happen, et cetera, leverage and greed and avarice. And then the second time I was like, wait, you can't short bubbles. Sometimes you got to ride them up. You know what I mean? Like, don't get in the way of the bubble. You know what I mean? And so I read that like once every 2 years. I read that book. It's an awesome, awesome book for a trader to read. Like, my first thing was like, oh, just short these. These people are being irrational. The second thing was like, no, the market can freaking be irrational longer than you can be solvent. And here are all the historical examples of that, right? Exactly. And so, I learned things like, certain things you don't fight, so you get out of the way, and sometimes you got to get stopped out. And so I think that's a really good book to read. I think entertaining, which I think is probably like everybody forces people to read, like I had to read when I got on exchange, was Reminiscence of a Stock Operator.
That's my favorite, yeah.
I've read that. So that's kind of like an obvious one. I'm trying to think on another book. So the 4 Agreements and Brief History of Financial Euphoria I put up there for the trading audience. I'm trying to think if there's anything like on trading or any kind of valuation books that are out there. I don't have them off the top of my head.
Maybe I'll have for sure. Any like particular genre that like, you're really like drawn to when reading?
I'm trying to get out of like nonfiction.
Yeah,
because I think as a male, we're drawn to nonfiction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been trying to get into fiction. Just anything. Like I've read Little B, and I love that book, right? I recently read East of Eden. I love that book. I just talking about it. I read it again. I was kind of a screw off in high school, and I didn't read the books that I was supposed to read in English Lit. And then I went through and I read every single book that I was supposed to read in high school. So, you know what I mean? I went and read Sun Also Rises and, The Grapes of Wrath and, all these books that I was supposed to read. I was like, these are great books, And so, Guns, Germs, and Steel is a book I love, but these are all these like kind of nonfiction books that we kind of get into. And as a friend of mine said, another trader is like, we do nonfiction all freaking day. All day. We do nonfiction all fucking day. It's like we need some creativity and some other stuff. I want to check out, read a good story.
And there's a book that recently came out. It's called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. I feel like it's perfect that I came across this book and then coming to to talk to you, because I feel like the popular sentiment like in the world is like to specialize, to be niche. But you come across to me. Not come across to me. I mean, you do multiple things, and you do multiple things well. So like, what are your thoughts on that topic?
I'm probably going to sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I felt like, when everybody tells me like, how do you get rich? I was like, it's concentration and leverage. It's generally leverage, right? It might be leverage in point in charging 1 million people a penny, or getting, 50 to 1 to 10 to 1 on a commodity, right? Right. And so like trade commodities, like stocks, when you trade, your leverage trading, right? When you're day trading, right, you don't have to put up that much money, right? They might give you 20 to 1 leverage or 10 to 1, depending on the clearing firm or whatever, right? And that leverage allows you to walk home and make, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, 50,000 a day, right? Trading, right? And so that leverage is where the money comes from. Now, some people do it like Google, like we take up half of a penny from, 1 billion people, right? Or leveraging our infrastructure. Or financial leverage. But in terms of like, my life in general, those concepts apply almost everywhere, right? And so like I can apply some of those things like, when I look at a business or I'm investing or whatever, I'm like, all right, what's the leverage point here? Like what gets all the yield, right?
Exactly.
And so whether it's a movie and it's the distribution outlet, or it's, the movie, at this time, it's if you're seen here, or it's this Instagram post that gets you all the girls looking at you, whatever you're trying to do, right? Like it's trying to find the leverage and your interest. But I think, like, there's probably a few key concepts that I can apply to almost every situation, right? It's kind of like, and those concepts of those tools, it's like a Swiss Army knife, right? Like I can pretty much do everything with the Swiss Army knife, right? Of these concepts and go everywhere. And I like to, I want to be, I don't want to be known as a calculator, or I don't want my life just to be calculating to earn money. I want to have experiences and do shit. So I just take those concepts wherever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I always love this one, like Zen saying, it's like, if you understand one thing, you understand all things. So interesting concept. So I got one more question for you, Bill, and then I'll kick it off to JJ if he has anything left. So for the listeners that don't know that you're friends with Dan Bilzerian, and so everyone has this idea of who he is. They see this larger than life persona. So my question is, what is he really like, and maybe what are some of the misconceptions about him?
Okay. I mean, it's hard to give you like what he's really like in just a short answer, but I would say that Dan is very honest, very straightforward and outspoken. He's nice. He's generally calm, and he's also an asshole. Which I thought was like, you're such an asshole. You know what I mean? Like he's a very good friend. He's very honest. He has integrity. And that's one thing I love about him. He has integrity. He's honest and he's straightforward. He's outspoken and brash and opinionated, and you see some of that come out as well. But and he has a circus built around him, right? He's built up this circus. He started that whole Instagram thing to get back at his girlfriend to prove that he could be famous, right? It was ego, right? It was all ego, right? And he's like, shit. Now what do I do with this fucking thing? And he's very intelligent. Like it's fame is fame, power, money, right? Fame is, in terms of getting girls, is like 150 to 100x money. Okay, and that's because humans are herd animals, and pre-selection works, right? It's like you go to college and everybody's like having sex because we're all college students. We're all pre-selected. We're all whatever. And so once you pre-selected yourself and you're famous, it's like the broke guitarist lead whatever gets more tail than the millionaire. You know what I mean? And so that was Dan's thing. And he studies psychology. He understands about, creating pre-selection and stacking the odds and framing the argument, whatever. And that's what it was, But that's not a life. Like when I'm hanging out, Dan, most of the time we're playing chess. We generally play chess and we talk about love and fear. Because we think there's those two things. There's love and there's fear. Those are the poles, right? And so we talk about overcoming fears and these barriers, and how the circus interferes with my wish for him is to fall in love and to take that risk, and he's not taking that risk out of fear. And we have like all these existential questions and talks. That's kind of like what it really is like. Now that being said, Dan is a hedonist and he's unapologetic about everything. Right? Like he loves women. He loves having sex with a bunch of women. He likes the fact that fame gives him all that access, etc.
Cool. Thanks.
Right. And that's Dan in a nutshell that I can tell you in 2 minutes.
And it's funny. I didn't really know anything about him because I knew more about his father because his
dad is the original badass. Yes.
No kidding, taking the Singer Corporation and things like that. I mean, he was, one of the original guys, right?
His dad is the nicest guy. His dad,
interesting.
I had a deal that was going to fall apart, and he gave me a pep talk, and I fucking stuck to it. He told me about a deal with, I don't know, back in the days where they were going to close a deal. And the guy's like, I want to open up the check. He does not want to open up a check. And he was going in between. And like whoever the guy was, might have been a CEO, RJ Nabisco, somebody, he tore up the check and said, tell your boss to take this. He's like, oh shit, I got to close this deal in 24 hours. You got to raise $100 million. You know what I mean? Or something,
Wow.
some big thing. I was I was in a similar situation. Like I had to raise $8 million, which was like a lot for me at the time. And I didn't have it. And I had to like basically swallow my ego and dial for dollars. And he gave me the pet talk and the deal went through and made 100% return. And I was like, thank God I talked to Dan Bilzerian's dad. You know?
Yeah, no kidding.
He's the nicest guy. He's the nicest guy.
Okay. I always wondered what he was like. Cause he's, once again, I'm a geek of financial history. So guys like that, they're, people you only read about, right? Like a Boski or, that kind of like, those guys were brilliant.
Yeah, he's a brilliant guy. And he's addicted he loves business and he loves doing deals and architecting deals. I mean, he's a really, really nice guy. And Dan, people don't know this, but like, I knew Dan from playing poker, but I went to this thing called Choice in the Desert, which was like a large group therapy class where you basically go and cry and get your shit straight, right? And so, and part of the Kool-Aid is like you get other people to go. And I talked to Dan. I was like, "Hey, here's my experience. This is what I got out of it. I think you would go. I think you get value out of it." He's like, "Yeah, I'll go." And we became best friends from that.
Oh, that's cool.
So
that's cool.
You get the brash. I went through SEAL training twice. Broke my leg in the first one twice. Guy, I don't give a fuck. I fuck a billion girls and blah 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 on the Instagram. But he's really a sensitive, thoughtful guy of integrity.
Yeah, see, I didn't even really know anything about him, and then Ray said, Dan Bilzerian, and then I went, wait, that's his father's name's Paul, right? Yeah, Bilzerian's son, and I was like, wow, because that's like one of the cool characters from the history of finance, right? I didn't know anything about the Instagram.
Barbarians at the Gate, he's in that book too, right? Like,
exactly, exactly. I mean, that's history, right? With the H. Ross Johnson and that LBO, that was I watched the movie. The movie was but James Garner was a classic.
I didn't see the movie. I read the book. It was great though. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm a James Garner fan from the Rockford File days. So
back when TV went off at night.
All right, cool. So, JJ, any more questions for Bill before we jump into the listener questions?
No.
All right, cool. So Bill, we're gonna hop into the listener question segment, and then we're gonna wrap this up. And so, just a reminder to the listeners that you guys, we encourage listener questions every week, funny ones, serious ones, whatever. Get those in every week. And so the first one comes from at the Thirst Lounge. Shout out to the Thirst Lounge. What inspires all of Bill's philanthropy?
I think it comes from my dad. My dad was scholarship to the University of Iowa, got out, played pro football for Beat back in the leather helmet days, then was a public defender. And, to like, as a kid, my annoyance, he knew like everybody was helping people and did things, et cetera. And he just instilled a sense of like do better and helping people out and where he came from. And he's from a different era, right? Like my dad was born in, I guess, the 40s, late 30s, so he didn't have the opportunity set that I had, coming out, right? Back when discrimination was legal, you know what I mean? And things like that, right? Pre-civil rights and all this other stuff. And so he was a hard dude, but he was also very much into like taking care and giving back. And so, I've been, people say, oh, you're successful, but like, I was geared for success, right? I have 2 college educated parents. I'm born in a period where, you could be successful in relative peace. I didn't get shipped off to war or anything like that. And so, I give a nod to that and realize that, my role on this planet to have an lasting impact is through my kids and through my philanthropy and to make it better. And, we all got a part to play. We're all, and I'm searching for my part, but where I can and within my priorities, I try and make it better. And some of that, which you see in the Thirst Lounge or some of these prop bets, is actually, if I can change people's minds or their perception, I have more leverage than me actually doing something.
Mm-hmm.
right? Right. The Dalai Lama does more in a tweet than I can do in 10 years. You know what I mean? Because he has reached into people's minds and changes their perception about certain things. And so sometimes in these prop bets where you see these health bets or whatever, it's like I'm looking at the ripple if this guy wins, right? On this health bet, how he's going to affect everybody else around him.
No, that's a great way of looking at it. And shout out to the Thirst Lounge for the question. Next question is from @Tarrant_Best. This may have already been discussed on the podcast, but how did you get the capital to start investing?
I earned it, right? So, as a trader, I got, you get a deal, you get a percentage like 15 or 20%, depending on your Sharpe ratio. And, I made, my course is Centaurus, my trading profits over, I don't know, 5 years over there was like $1 billion. I made like $1 billion and something, not including fines. So that's where the money came from. So, like, you know what I mean? I made more than IBM trading. You know what I mean? And so I got a percentage of that. You know what I mean? And that's where the money came. And then I fucked it off gambling and making movies and doing shit or whatever. And then I traded some more and made some more money. And then I fucked that off. And then I traded some more and made some more. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how it goes, right? Yeah. And so that's where the money came from. Trading.
And folks, that is one of the most honest answers you will ever hear. Most of these guys, seriously, most people are very, very, close-fisted about that sort of thing. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and to be clear, the $1 billion is not mine. That's what I made for trading, right? Then I get a percentage of it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Shout out to Tarrant_Best for the question. Next one's from @FlowJunkie311. What is the best argument that Bitcoin can actually increase in long-term value above, say, a floor of 25K or other than just market madness?
Yeah, I think I typed back on that one. It's inflation. I mean, I'm not really the big, there's number one thing I think is inflation and people trying to get out. Like, if you're in Venezuela, right, and your currency is collapsing, what are you going to do? You're going to buy Bitcoin, right? You can buy paper clips. It doesn't matter what you're buying. As long as it's something that still moves around, it's better than your currency as it's collapsing, right? And so in terms of dollars, I think inflation is like one of the risks if the dollar collapses for any reason that's out there. Then I guess the secondary reason from my perspective is that just adoption. Like I see a lot of people use it for moving money around, right? And, you have a lot of attackers saying, well, it's 30% this or 30% that. I'm like, if you go to the mob and you say, hey, I want to move this money, they're going to charge you 30, 40%. So like, you know what I mean? And so like, you know what I mean? Like people trying to get money out of this country or that country, whatever, 30%, is no big deal. That sounds like a bargain to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
It's like, people like, thinking of the way people's like, wealthy people move money in art and gold and diamonds is like, people are like, well, why are you buying gold? How much gold can you carry with you? Can you swallow a gold bar? They're like, no, I got to get diamonds. I'm like, okay, how many diamonds can you swallow? Now you're like, well, I got a piece of paper or something memorized in my head and I can walk around with $500 million in my head anywhere. That's pretty useful to people. And I think that use case is not going away as long as people keep accepting it as secure and usable. The wider adoption of like it's worth 25,000 and it's really a demand for the product. It's just simple supply and demand.
Yeah.
Will people believe in it and adopt it and use it? And that's a question I stay away from. There's people like, yes, it's going to be this and whatever and blah blah blah. And I have other, I get Norel, the Nobel Prize winner saying it's going to zero.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I stay out of it. Like when it went up to 17,000, I sold out or whatever. And I was just like, it seems too far too fast, but we'll see. But in meanwhile, I can tell you people are, I have so at the Triton Poker, I have people who donate to charity, right? And they're like, oh, can I send it to you in Bitcoin? I'm like, yeah, I'll take Bitcoin. So people are using it, Right now, this day and age, people are using it. They used to use Roman, what was it, lira or Roman coins? They don't use Roman coins anymore. Like it could go to zero, right?
And now they got rid of stock certificates, so you can't even pull up a certain.
Yeah, you can't move. You can't move anything. So like. Yeah. Would you rather deal with the mob who might rob you or kill you or whatever? Or would you rather deal with Bitcoin?
I was. You know what I mean? It's what I was telling the JJ. Like I believe, and I I don't know this for sure, but I think poker players might be the biggest like adopters of like cryptocurrency in general, just because of the ease to move it, especially like countries or.
Yeah, the ease of moving money. And like I got into like almost a fist fight with a border agent in Canada, like just recently. I literally like the guy. First of all, I'll rant on this. Like my girlfriend is the exact opposite. Like she avoids conflict, whatever. I'm like, bring it on, motherfucker. And so like the guy pulls me out. He clearly racially profiles me. Right? He just grabs me out of the thing, brings me into secondary screening. He asked me, "Do you have over $10,000?" I'm like, "No." Why? Not over 10,000 US, and it was in Canadian. So he counts it, and I'm like an inconsequential amount of money over the fucking Canadian limit, right? Whatever. And he's going through like my medicines. He's like, you need to have a prescription here, whatever. And I'm like, I'm fucking just like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm giving him the face. He's like, what's wrong? I was like, yeah. He's like, I'm just doing my job. I'm like, not just fucking doing your job. You just like, you targeted me for a reason. My assistant's there with me. She's like, oh shit, what's going on? So the guy's like, whatever. And he's like, I'm like, dude, you messing around. He's like, I could have you arrested for this, whatever. And I'm like, fucking arrest me then. What are you going to fucking do? Let's go. Like, whatever. And he's like, I don't know how to deal with this guy like this. Like, nobody talks to a customs agent in a foreign country this way. He's like, who the fuck is this dude? The other guy comes over. There's two agents they're going through my shit. And I'm just like, whatever, count it out. They count it out. They go in the fucking back. They put it in. They're like, count it. I'm like, I'm not fucking counting it. She's going to count it. I can't count. Because I get ADD and I can't count. And so she starts counting it. We're arguing. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I was like, you guy's a fucking asshole. Like, I'm telling this guy's an asshole, customs agent. Anyway, long story short, the guy's like, they can waiver it, right? The guy has discretion. Like, it was an honest mistake. I didn't try to hide the money. I pulled it out of my fucking pocket, whatever. But he's just like, it's too late now. I've gone too angry. I've gone too angry black man on him already. And so he's going to fucking charge me the $250 and give me the fucking mark on my fucking thing where they always bring me in for secondary screen because I know how it works. So I'm fucking livid. And I'm like loud and like this guy, I'm like, yeah, you're really good. You're a real fucking hero. Like, you're a hero guy, but whatever. I was like, I know people too. Don't fucking come to the States and whatever. The whole secondary screening is looking at me like, who the fuck is this dude? Why aren't we throwing him in the jail or under the jail? And I'm like, can send me, but then you're going to have to go to court and I'm going to know your fucking name. You know what I mean? I'm going to know who you are then. Like, and and they were just like.
This is funny because I have buddies who work for customs doing that, and I can just see them dealing with you, and I can just see.
I only know with the badge, but I was like, you show up in fucking court, I'm gonna know exactly who you are.
Oh my god!
And so they were just like, fuck it, let's just find this fucker and get him the fuck out of here. And have to pay the fine. Why am I telling that story? Because if I had Bitcoin, it wouldn't have been a problem.
Yo, I like this fire. There you go. Aggressive Bill Perkins. All right, man.
It's so funny. I was so angry. I got so triggered out of being racially profiled. I just fucking ape shit. Call my turn. Let's go. I like fucking court. Let's go.
I live in court. Remember Danny DeVito and
money? Yeah, that's great. That's great. Oh man,
you got to do better.
Shout out to Flow Junkie 311 for the question and bringing that story out. All right. Next question from @Kevin Shelton. What is more fun, figuring something new out in trading and it being successful, or watching people work hard to win crazy prop bets?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to go with the puzzle. I'm addicted to puzzles. Like I haven't had a chess lesson. I'm supposed to get a chess lesson from Lawrence Trent. I just learn by doing, but I love the fucking puzzles. And now my girlfriend's like, will you get off the fucking phone playing chess? You know what I mean? So, I mean, I do. There are some prop bets that are more fun than that, like watching people, like watching the man overcome or the woman overcome extreme odds, right? That level of discipline and dedication, that there's something satisfying about that, even when I lose. I like it when they come really close, but then they lose. But there's something satisfying about that, but I'm a puzzle addict.
All right, cool. All right, shout out to Kevin Shelton for the question. Next question is from SM Wembley 14. I'd like to know when Bill realized he made it.
Oh, wow. Well, there was a false one when I was like, I remember I made like, got up to like 30 something $1,000 a year. And I was like, I fucking made it. I make more than my mom. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I make more than my mom. And I was like, I was walking around like a fucking peacock. You know what I mean? You know, but I had a goal of like being a millionaire before I was 30, and I made it. And I was like, you know, I sent my mom some money, and I finally confessed to a sin as a kid. So my mom had this Toyota Celica, right? And I got my driver's license at 17. My friend Pete didn't have a driver's license. He goes, let me drive. It was a stick. So I take him out in Newark, New Jersey, in this area to go drive the car. Of course, you know, he hits the gas. We're supposed to hit the clutch. We spin out and we hit the back of the car on a telephone pole, like one of those wooden telephone poles, right? It rounds it up and scrapes it. It looks like somebody scraped it. And I'm like, fuck. And so I'm like, Ma, I don't know what happened. I came out, we went and got a slice of pizza, and I guess a truck came by and scraped the fucking car. And fucked up the trunk or whatever, the whole thing, the insurance and whatever. And, you know, I lied to my mom. And then finally, I fucking paid for the complete value of the car and confessed that I let Pete drive the car. I was trying to give him a driving lesson, and I fucked up a car. And that's when I made it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
My mom was like, I always knew it was kind of strange, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
so that's when I finally fucking made it. When I can confess to that and pay.
Yeah,
my
well,
mom
no, it's
for
good.
that
It's
car.
fitting. You know, the name of our podcast, Confessions of So
yeah, that was a confession. I finally cleared that up. So.
Shout out to SM Wibbly 14 for the question. The last question comes from @M Trading Media. You mentioned you created the Thirst Lounge. What exactly is the short term and future goal of this project?
So the short term was just to give, well, I guess 10 people a shot and see what they do. We always have this experiment, and I've done it before. I've given people like internships or hired them as assistants to give them a shot. And it's, can you take somebody from the 95%, the hustlers and the doers, and move, 95%, the people who are just kind of apathetic or don't have a shot, and move them to the 5%, right? Kind of that thing. Like if they had the opportunity, will they shine, right? What will they do with the bankroll? What will they do with the access to the media? What will they do? You give them a blank slate and the opportunity, what will they do, right? And then just see what happens and see what's entertaining. You know, very, very loose guidelines. Like, this is a poker, entertainment, travel, lifestyle show. And that was kind of like the short-term thing. It's like, here's an experiment. Let's see what happens. We don't know what it's going to be. And now that I've seen it and out there and I'm feeling a little bit liquid, I think I want to hammer it next year and up the stakes, right? So now guys have like a 20K bankroll and some extra bennies, some tickets and tournament tickets, etc. I think I want to up it to 100K bankroll and add in some travel aspects and really like try and jam like a network, you know, like a poker themed risk entertainment network all across the globe, and get some killers in there who will, you know, who can handle that bankroll and can also entertain. So I'm you know, it's not completely fully formed, but it's not going away. And I'm thinking big now. Now I really want to take risk and get involved. Like, I'm going to be part of the experiment in terms of like giving it direction and molding it.
I definitely would love to see that. I'm sure others would as well. So good luck with that. And shout out to M Trading Media for the question. So yeah, that's going to wrap up today's podcast. Bill, any final thoughts or, you know, plugs you want to get in?
No, I mean, you know, the book is going to come out when it comes out. It's a little early, right? So we talk about that, like tune into the Thirst Lounge and, you know, check me out on Twitter, what am I, BP22? I'm BP22 on Twitter, and I'm Bill Perkins on Instagram. Just check me out. That's my plugs. Come debate me. I like debating. I you know, if there's a reasonable debate, I like to debate, and it's not necessarily between you and me. There's like a universe that's watching us, and maybe we'll affect people and change people's minds, or at least enlighten them that we can have reasonable debates. That, you know, that's one thing I like to do Twitter. And if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to come
Bill.
back
Really
on
appreciate you for coming on.
Oh, that'd be great.
JJ, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just really grateful to Bill for coming on. It's really, really nice speaking, to the legends of the history of finance and guys who've been there, and what you read about in the headlines. The people who are actually behind the scenes pulling the levers, and it's fascinating. And also, your insight into Paul Bazarian and how he helped you. Also, I'm really, really grateful about the book, and that was really eye-opening for me because I often offhandedly say, I haven't had a vacation since '95, and it took me dying to actually take 3 weeks off. But when I think about it, I kind of sound nuts. And then when I I met you now, and I'm reading, thinking about this book, it's very impactful, especially to someone like me. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you so much.
Thanks for recognizing that. Yeah, my aim is to save people's lives, right? Like, there's one way to save lives, right? At the end of their life, like, try and get them to live for 6 months. But there's another way to save people's life, is not to waste the fucking hours and days.
Sure. And and I say this, not to like kiss ass or anything like that. And I know I speak for a lot of people, but like, no, keep spreading like your message, your philosophies, and all that. Seem like a very like honest, ethical person, and we all appreciate that. And so thanks for joining us today, Bill. And for JJ, for Bill, for myself, that's a wrap. All right, listeners, peace. All right.
All right, thanks. Peace out.
Thanks. Have a good night, everyone.